right after court yesterday, I sent you a draft copy of the jury instructions. We can talk about it at the scheduling conference, but I just wanted to send it to you a little bit early so you can take a look at it. Any other issues we need to talk about this morning, Mr. Zacher? Other than Ms. Phillips we'll swear you in again this morning, just so you know. But
I'll just put on the record that I'm told that there has been some comments from members of Mr. Phillips' families, and I asked the court just to admonish them to not react in the
state. Everybody I know this is emotional, and I know it's difficult, but this is a court of law. You have to show respect. Cannot say things. You cannot eye roll, cannot flail. I'm not sure if anybody's doing it, but if you do, please don't. If you were, please don't, I should say. And nothing was really noticeable to me, but my head's down most of the time anyway, to be honest. I take notes, so I didn't see anything. But I'm not paying attention. So, State, have anything else?
Your Honor, yesterday, replete through Ms. Phillips' testimony was evidence of other acts that the court deemed inadmissible. We did not object to them at the time, and specifically I'm referring to evidence of restriction or denials to use the cell phone. That was specifically prohibited by the court at the other acts motion hearing. And it's in your order. Mark, taking my cell phone, always taking my cell phone, he would usually do that. There were multiple comments, both by counsel and by Ms. Phillips, about the cell phone. And so at this point, I just want to ask the court to A, admonish them about that, and that there should be no further testimony, and B, that they are prohibited from arguing about restricting the cell phone use during closing.
Counsel.
Judge, that's not my recollection of the other X order. The court specifically allowed Ms. Phillips to talk about being isolated by Ms. Phillips by way of the incident with the internet at the home. It was part and parcel, quite frankly, with the first physical attack of Ms. Phillips, but her cell phone was taken after the fact, and that explains why Mr. Phillips was calling Kevin Stevens from her cell phone, and why that cell phone exchange applied. I don't intend to raise the issue again. I didn't intend to step up and follow any other acts.
Yeah, I think all the comments about the phone being taken were in the context of that night, mostly. I don't think they were replete with comments about maybe that one other incident it was taken, but that was part of, I don't think, I mean, right now, I think the state's trying to say that there are references to other times he took it because this is something he would generally do, is take her phone. I don't even remember her saying that specifically, but I do remember her saying that in episodes that are part of the case. So I think references can be made about the phone being taken, for example, that night.
That night.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but number 3, it's in the order, number 3 that you signed, that he otherwise prevented her from maintaining phone access is inadmissible. So her saying he always would do that, and she did say that. And that should not be argued by Mr. Zacher, and I know he argued that in his opening.
Mr. Zacher?
Judge, I don't intend to argue it in closing,
All
but
right.
I would take the position that the state's waived any objection when they didn't make an objection at the time.
And I don't think it was a significant amount or a significant enough reference to actually violate the order. I did not see it as a violation of that order. There was not like, here, this situation where he took my phone, this situation he took my phone, this situation where he took my phone. That wasn't the type of testimony. It was, maybe it was too generalized because it was a response to those incidences, but if it's not argued in closing, that's fine, other than the particular incidences where the phone were taken. Does that satisfy?
Yes, thank you.
State? Anything else from the state?
No.
All right, and the jury is ready to come in. Let's bring the jury in. All right, everybody may be seated. Good morning, everybody. We'll get started right away. I think, Ms. Phillips, let's have you come on up. We'll have you re-sworn because it's a new day, and we'll continue with the direct examination.
Solemnly swear the testimony you give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
All right. Morning, Lori.
Morning.
I think where we left off was talking about your access to the home security system after you had fled from Mark. So let me ask you about that. At any point, did you access the home security system through your telephone?
Yes.
Why did you do that, Lori?
I was looking to see if Mark either left the home or invited anybody over.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. What would lead you to believe that Mark would leave the home?
What would lead me to believe that he would leave the home?
Yes.
He had stated he found some beer tokens to a Holmen bar, that he was going to go to that bar and pick up some ladies.
Okay. And Lori, did you have some sense that Mark might also try to follow you in the other vehicle?
Oh, yes.
Which cameras in particular did you check?
All of them.
Why were you checking all of them, Lori?
Because when I couldn't tell if he had left the house or not with the vehicle, or had somebody actually even come in, I thought, oh my gosh, maybe he's in the hot tub. So that's the reason for the hot tub as well.
Okay. And Lori, do you remember exactly where you were each time that you checked the cameras?
No.
Is it something that you were checking throughout the course of the evening just to see if Mark was up and about?
Yes.
Now, at any point, Lori, were you watching anything other than the live feeds from those cameras?
No.
And I'm going to ask you a question that you'll probably get on cross-examination. Were you checking these live feed of cameras to see whether or not Mark had been injured?
No.
Now, let's talk about where you went after using the restroom at Woodman's. Where was that, Lori?
So after leaving Woodman's, then I went back over by the Baymont, and there was like a vacant lot type thing across the street that was dark.
Okay, what was the plan once you got to that vacant lot?
To sleep there.
Okay. Were you able to sleep in the truck?
For a short time I did, I think.
Were you able to spend the entire night in that vacant lot?
No, it was too cold.
Okay. So, at some point you got cold. What did you decide to do then?
I believe I actually searched to see if there were any other hotels near me. And when I didn't come up with anything, then I decided that it was probably safe to go back home.
Okay. Well, what led you to believe that you were safe to go back home at that point, Lori?
Because if Mark, he would have been passed out by then.
Oh, that's something that you would have expected, that Mark was probably passed out and
Correct.
wouldn't have been up and aggressive?
Correct, yep.
Now, when you were going home, Lori, did you do anything particular with the cameras?
Oh, yes, I turned them off so that the alarm didn't wake Mark up.
Is that the sole reason that you turned the cameras off at that point?
Yes,
And what would lead you to believe that the alarm might wake Mark up?
because there's a beeping, I can't remember if it's a beeping or what it is, it's been a few years, but that it alerts your phone anytime there's movement.
Okay. Were you trying to conceal evidence of you returning home at that point, Lori?
No,
So when you're returning home, and if I could get the alarm off, please. Exhibit 526. Lori, do you recall exactly which way you took back to your home that evening?
Honestly, no, not until I heard somebody else state which way I drove home.
From the area of West Salem, coming from the, I guess it would be the east to the west?
Correct.
But you don't recall that specifically?
I honestly didn't remember that, no.
And Lori, did you see Mark at all when you were driving back home?
No.
Which driveway did you take when you returned back into the home?
So, the
I'll
one
give
to
you
the left of the house.
I'll give you the laser pointer. Why don't you point that out for us?
This one. Oh, sorry, this one.
So you've indicated the westbound driveway,
Correct.
and or I guess the western side driveway. And Ms. Phillips, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the driveway that you typically took regardless of which direction you were coming from?
Me, yes.
Now, let's describe the conditions when you were driving back. Was it light out at all?
No, it was pitch black.
Do you have any street lights or sources of artificial lighting right in that area that would have illuminated the area of the driveway?
No. Well, my truck lights, that's it.
So other than the headlights, nothing else?
Correct.
And as you were driving up that driveway, the western driveway, where was your attention focused when you were driving, Lori?
And the driveway in front of me.
In the Dodge Ram that you were driving, were you seated differently from how you would normally be seated in the Subaru relative to the driveway?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a much bigger vehicle.
And Lori, at any point did you look over to the right or feel the need to look over to the right as you were driving up that west-facing driveway?
No.
Fair to assume that your attention would have been in front of you on the roadway?
Correct. On the driveway, correct.
Lori, I'm just going to ask you, did you see Mark out there when you returned to the house?
No.
How would you have reacted had you seen Mark?
I would have helped him.
Now, when you got back home, where did you park the vehicle?
Right here.
So, you've indicated the portico area between the back door to the house and the man cave. Is that correct?
Yep.
And am I correct in assuming that the front of the truck would be facing towards the east then in that view where you parked it?
Correct, towards the trees, right.
As opposed to when you left, the front of the truck would have been facing towards the west. Is that correct?
Correct.
When you got out of the truck, did you see Mark at all?
No.
What was your assumption of where Mark was at that point?
In bed, sleeping.
Okay, so what did you do when you got back home?
When I got back home, I went inside, but I noticed right away the door was unlocked, which was very unusual, as well as the dining room light was on. But I did see my husband's shoes right at the doorway, so I knew he was sleeping.
Okay, so what was your impression then that the door was unlocked and the light was on?
I was like, wow, he must have been drunker than I thought and must have just passed out.
Okay, so what did you do once you got into the house?
I went inside. I went to the couch to sleep there, but A, it wasn't comfortable, and B, if Mark would have woke up to go use the restroom, he would have walked right past me, and that might have upset him, so I decided to go upstairs.
All right. And had you ever spent the night upstairs before?
No, I don't even know. Maybe been upstairs once or twice.
Okay. What was upstairs?
There's 2 bedrooms, but I slept in the small one right when you got upstairs.
Okay. Now, were you able to get any sleep up there?
A little bit.
And at any point during the evening, did you do anything else with the cameras?
Yeah, when I woke up at one point and I remember thinking, where am I? I mean, because I was in an unusual spot. And then, like, everything was going through my mind of everything that happened that night. So I was like, oh my gosh, I need to turn the cameras back on so I don't get in trouble for turning them off to come home.
That's something that you felt that Mark would, that you would get in trouble for, so to speak?
Yes,
All right. So no dispute that at some point after returning home that you turned the cameras back on?
correct. Sorry.
No, it's a follow-up question. Overruled. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, Lori, about what time do you think that you got up that morning?
I want to say it was around 6:30.
Okay. Was it light out yet? Was it dark? What was the conditions that you recall?
I mean, it was lighter than when I got home, but it was still a little dark.
All right. So what was the plan when you got up? What did you intend to do?
Go downstairs and demand an apology from my husband.
At that point in time, did you feel that Mark would be violent or aggressive?
No, because he would have been more sober.
Okay. You figured that is this the type of state that you would go to Mark in when you would get apologies in the past?
Yes.
All right. So once you got up, describe what you did.
Once I got up, I used the restroom and then went to our bedroom.
And what did you find when you went into the bedroom?
Our bed was unmade and there was like pillows everywhere.
Was Mark in there?
No.
Did that alarm you at that point, Lori?
Yeah, because I had no idea where he was.
So what was your thought of where you would look next?
I thought I would go see if he actually took the Subaru somewhere last night, and I just didn't catch it.
Okay. And when you were getting up in the morning, did you have your cell phone with you at that time, Lori?
No. Well, it was upstairs.
Oh, upstairs where you had slept?
Correct. It was in my purse.
All right. And I'm going to ask that we go to a video on Ms. Witzke's computer here. And this will be Exhibit 507 from the video file, subfile video 1. Lori, do you see that exhibit up on the screen right now?
I do.
And is that you in the photograph to the left?
Yes.
Is that the position where the truck was parked after you returned back home?
Yes.
Lori, what are you doing in this video clip?
I went outside to go to the garage.
Okay, and I'm going to give you the laser pointer. I want you to point out where to the garage you were headed towards.
The door is right there.
Okay, so you're pointing at, looks like there's part of the side door visible on the garage, is that correct?
Right, it's brown.
At this point, Lori, did you have any reason to believe that Mark had been injured?
None, no.
All right, let's play the clip. All right. Does that, is that consistent with what you remember initially coming out of the house, that you were walking just towards the garage to see whether or not the Subaru was there?
Correct.
And Lori, did you appear to be upset or visibly shaken in that particular clip?
No.
All right. If we could get clip number 2 ready to go, please. All right. So, Lori, did you make it all the way to the garage when you went out looking for Mark?
No.
Why not?
Because I saw my husband out of the corner of my eye.
How did you react to that?
I freaked out and I ran straight to him.
Okay. I'm going to play clip number 2 at full volume, please. Lori, what were we hearing in that clip?
Me.
What were you doing?
Yelling, crying,
And why were you crying?
because I found my husband dead.
Is that the exact moment that you saw that Mark was out there?
Yes.
Let's get clip number 3 up, please. Lori, what did you do when you saw Mark laying out in the snowbank?
I ran to him.
And what did you see about or notice about Mark when you ran to him?
That he wasn't breathing. He wasn't alive anymore.
What led you to believe that he wasn't alive?
His hands were like purple. I could tell. It was obvious.
And how did you react to seeing Mark out there dead?
I mean, I mean,
Give me a minute.
how did I react? I mean, I was in disbelief. I was in shock. I just ran. Then I ran inside the house to go get my phone to call 911.
You didn't have your phone with you at that point?
I did not have my phone. No.
I've got clip number 3 up here. Lori, do you recognize yourself in that clip?
Yes.
All right, if we could play clip number 3, please.
That one takes me right back to that day.
Lori, do you need a moment?
No.
What was happening in that clip?
I was running back inside to go get my phone to call 911.
And it sounds like you were screaming or crying during that clip.
Correct.
And it sounds like a stupid question, but I have to ask you, why were you screaming or crying?
Because I just found my husband.
Now, prior to these video clips that we just showed, Lori, did you have any idea that Mark had passed away?
No, none.
After running into the house, where did you go?
I ran upstairs to get my phone to call 911.
And we've heard the 911 call. I'm not going to play that again. But do you remember much about that call, Lori?
No.
Why not?
I was in shock. I just remember answering whatever they needed me to answer and trying to do whatever they needed me to do.
What did you hope that the 911 dispatcher would do?
Bring help.
Did you think at that point that there was any point that Mark could be revived based on your observations?
No.
So, do you recall Sergeant Valencia arriving at your house?
I wouldn't have known who he was, but yes, I remember a police officer getting there, yes.
And what was your condition or your state of mind when Sergeant Valencia arrived?
Again, I was in shock.
Do you feel like you had a clear head when you were talking to Sergeant Valencia?
No,
Do you remember much of what you said to Sergeant Valencia?
no.
How about Deputy Stoetinger, who took you inside?
I remember being inside with Mr. Leinfelder. I don't remember.
And let's talk about Mr. Leinfelder. Is that somebody that you had known of, at the very least, prior to February 22nd of 2019?
Yes,
In what capacity?
just from La Crosse. I've known Fritz for 30 plus years. Excuse me, Mr. Leinfelder.
Just from seeing him around?
Correct.
And do you remember much of your conversation with Mr. Leinfelder inside of the house?
I mean, I remember telling him, answering his questions. Do I remember everything I said? No.
At some point, did you go to the Holmen Police Department to talk to Investigator Leinfelder?
I did.
And what was your impression of why you did that?
so that we could figure out what happened to Mark, so I could help him, give him any information I knew.
At that point, did you have any reason to believe that you were a suspect in Mark's death?
None. No, I thought Fritz was helping me.
And what were you trying to get out to Mr. Leinfelder when you were talking to him at the Holmen Police Department?
What was I trying to get out?
Yeah, that was poorly phrased. What were you trying to communicate to him?
I just wanted him to know everything that happened and hoping that he could figure out what happened.
Lori, were you still upset during that time frame?
Yes.
Were you thinking very clearly at that point?
I'm sure not, no.
And were there details or facts that you left out of that interview with Mr. Leinfelder?
Clearly there were, because it had stated that in the video. I continuously said, I forgot this, I forgot this.
Was that because you were trying to mislead Investigator Leinfelder?
Absolutely not.
Now, do you remember Investigator Leinfelder asking you specifically about whether or not there was a history of domestic abuse during that interview?
Now I remember, yes, because I read the transcripts.
And at the time, do you recall indicating that there wasn't much of a history of domestic abuse?
No, I stated Mark's never punched me, is what I said.
Did you bring up the fact that Mark had choked you in the past?
That at that moment, no, I didn't want Mark to come off as a bad person.
Or any of the other incidents with Mark?
No.
And you jumped one question ahead of me, Lori, but
Okay.
why didn't you bring up the prior acts of domestic abuse at that time?
As I stated to Mr. Leinfelder immediately, he was a good man, and I didn't want to tarnish what his thought process would have been of my husband.
Is that why you said that Mark was such a good guy?
Yeah.
Now, do you recall having a discussion with Investigator Leinfelder about the fact that you and Mark had argued earlier in the evening?
Yes.
And Lori, at some point, did you try to show Investigator Leinfelder an area where you had a bruise?
Yeah, I remember telling him that I felt different in different areas, but I hadn't seen anything yet.
And did Investigator Leinfelder appear to take a closer look at your neck or chest area?
I remember him saying that he thought he saw something on my neck, yes.
Did anyone offer to photograph that or document the injury?
No.
Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the injuries here. And I'm going to go back to the Elmo, please. Do you recall Hannah Klinsky coming to stay with you after Mark passed away?
Yes, she came on Saturday.
And how do you recall, Lori, noticing that you had these bruises and injuries on you the following day?
It was after I took a shower and I got out of the shower.
And did Hannah have a reaction to the fact that you were bruised?
Yes, she's like, oh my God, we need to take pictures of this.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 520, previously received. Lori, what are we looking at there?
My leg.
And this is the bruise that Hannah described as like a boot print or a footprint.
Correct.
Exhibit 522. Is that a photograph of?
That looks like another leg picture as well.
Exhibit 521. Can't quite tell if this is a shoulder or a leg, but is that a bruise?
It is.
Did you have bruising along your shoulders from where Mark had pushed you into the truck?
I mean, that picture, I'm not positive if that's a shoulder or a leg. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Well, I'm asking, Lori, did you have bruises along your arm where Mark had?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
I'll show you Exhibit 523. What is that a picture of?
My arm,
And what, if you recall, is that injury from?
Mark grabbing me and pulling me around the truck.
Did these bruises hurt Lori the next day?
Yes.
Exhibit 524. We're looking at on this.
I see a bruise and something else, and then like that red mark.
Okay. And is that something that happened during when Mark had been physically abusive with you on February 22nd?
Yes.
This next one I'm not going to display. I'm just going to ask you to look at it. This is picture 525, the injury of the of your breast. What are we looking at here?
A bruise on my right, it looks like maybe my right breast.
Was that something that was sustained in the course of Mark physically abusing you on February 22nd as well?
It was.
Was that the bruise or the injury that you were talking about when you described to Mark that your boob hurt?
Correct.
At any point, did any investigator from the sheriff's department or otherwise ask you to come in and be photographed or otherwise document your injuries?
No.
Would you have done so had you been asked?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk to you about your comments during your interview with Investigator Leinfelder. Do you recall, Lori, whether or not, what your response was to Investigator Leinfelder when he asked whether or not you hit your husband with the truck?
I said I did not.
What's your impression, or did you believe at that time that you had hit Mark?
No.
To this day, are you even sure exactly what happened once Mark reached that driver's side of the truck?
I have no idea what happened to my husband.
Lori, do you know for certain that Mark was not in front of the truck when you hit the gas?
Yes, that's what I could see. I could see in front of the truck when I was driving away because my headlights were on.
We're getting to the end here, and I'm going to ask you the big questions, Lori. At any point when you were escaping from Mark on February 22nd of 2019, did you believe that you were creating a substantial risk of killing him or causing serious bodily injury?
Objection calls for legal.
For perception, Judge.
Well, it is a legal conclusion sustained. Go ahead.
Did you believe that Mark was at any risk when you were leaving?
No.
Did you believe that your act of leaving would be likely to kill or seriously injure Mark?
No.
Did you think that you even had a remote chance of injuring Mark when you hit the gas when he was on the driver's side of the truck?
No.
Was it ever your intent to injure Mark?
Never. No.
Lori, what was your sole purpose for trying to get away from Mark that night?
To get away from him so that I would be safe, to get to safety.
Despite everything that we've heard and everything that we've testified to in this trial, how do you feel about Mark today?
I love him. I miss him.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Crosse?
Ms. Phillips, the last thing you had testified to, your sole purpose that night was to get to safety. Is that what you said?
Correct.
So for everyone hearing your testimony today, is that, I mean, that's your sole purpose for that entire night? Is that what you mean in terms of escaping from Mr. Phillips?
When I left.
When you left, and then your actions thereafter?
Judge, objection vague.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead. Be more specific.
So your sole purpose was to get to safety. You're talking about the driveway incident.
Correct.
Was that your sole purpose when you went to the subdivision?
To get to safety,
Yes.
I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was going.
Was that your sole purpose when you went to check into a hotel?
Yes, so that I did not sleep at home, correct.
Was that your sole purpose, or sole consideration, or was that what and I guess, let me rephrase that. Was that a primary consideration after the hotel? Your safety?
Was my safety a primary consideration after the hotel?
After the hotel, when you're getting ready, I guess after the hotel, where you go next?
To Woodman's, you mean, or to the vacant lot?
To Woodman's.
To Woodman's. Well, I went there to use the restroom.
In the vacant lot?
The vacant lot, I went there to sleep because I couldn't get a hotel room.
And you didn't want to go home?
At that point, no, not yet, no.
Because you were concerned about your safety?
Correct.
Did you testify that there wasn't a remote chance that you hit Mr. Phillips with the vehicle?
Did I testify to when?
Just
Judge,
a few
I'm going to
moments
object.
ago.
It's mischaracterizing my question on direct.
If it wasn't what you asked, you can say no. Go ahead.
Did you indicate or testify in response to Mr. Zacker's question that you didn't think there was a remote chance that you hit Mr. Phillips that night?
Correct.
And you indicated that you don't recall speaking with Deputy Stotinger the next day, February 23rd.
Was he the first police officer or the second?
I believe he would have been the second.
Honestly, I don't. I remember talking to Mr. Leinfelder.
So you remember Sergeant Valencia?
I remember a police officer coming. I wouldn't have known who he was.
So let me ask this a different way. You witnessed and paid attention to the last 4 days of proceedings. Is that correct?
Correct.
So even if you don't remember from this particular time, you, sitting in court, saw the different witnesses. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you saw Deputy Stotinger testify.
Yes.
So now you know who that is. Is that correct?
I believe I remember which one he was, yes.
But you don't remember him at the time, at the scene on February 23rd?
I don't recall talking to him. I don't remember going inside with him. That was what I had stated.
Okay. So you don't remember, do you believe then that you would have said or indicated, I didn't hit him or anything, him being Mr. Phillips?
I didn't hit him. That's, are you asking me if that's what I said?
I'm asking about your statement to Deputy Stotinger. Is it my understanding? Are you saying that you just don't remember saying that at all?
No, you have confused me. So can you ask the question again, please?
I can. Deputy Stotinger, the person who testified, got up and he went up there and he swore to tell the truth just like you are. And that Deputy Stotinger, you are saying that you do not remember speaking to him at any time on February 23rd, 2019.
I don't remember going inside with him.
Do you remember speaking with him in the driveway?
Well, I remember him stating that I had advised that I did not hit my husband. Yes, I do know what you're saying.
Okay, so you remember stating that it's not like I hit him or anything.
I said I did not hit him, correct.
Did Deputy Stotinger imply that you had hit him when you were speaking with him?
No, it was more along the lines of when I said, would tell the story and that Mark ran around and he's like, and I remember like, and I'm like, well, I didn't hit him.
So the thought at least had crossed your mind that that could have happened.
When he kind of like questioned like, gave me kind of a weird look. Yes, that's why I was like, I didn't hit him.
So Deputy Stoninger gave you a weird look.
In my eyes, yes.
Okay.
Now, yes, I do recall what you're asking me.
Okay, so you, Deputy Stoninger.
I just don't remember going inside with him. I
No,
apologize.
that's fine. So Deputy Stoninger gave you a weird look.
Like a questionable look, correct?
Okay, and that's what elicited that statement. It's not like I hit him or anything. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Can we not like step on each other's?
We can, and I'm sorry. So after Deputy Stoninger gave you that look, did you talk with Investigator Leinfelder after that?
It would have been after that, yes.
Okay. And then after that is when you went to the Holmen Police Department, is that correct?
That is correct.
And at that time, you had, I guess, felt accused, felt like someone was suspicious of you. What were you feeling? I mean, describe this weird look to us.
No, not with Mr. Leinfelder, I didn't know.
Okay.
Not at all.
But you had at least considered that it was suggested that that's what was being thought by Deputy Stoninger.
I just wanted to clear if he did question anything, clear that.
And then you do remember going to the Holmen Police Department?
I do.
And was your testimony a few moments ago that while at the Holmen Police Department, it was, I guess, your intention to help Investigator Leinfelder, whoever, determine what had happened to Mr. Phillips?
Correct.
Because you didn't know.
Correct.
So you were going to provide as much information as you could,
Yes.
and you were going to make sure that you provided important details.
To my recollection, yes.
And that's why you, oops, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Are you finished?
Yes.
And that's why you were willing to make a written statement to Investigator Leinfelder.
Absolutely.
And then when you believe that you remembered something that you had left out in that written statement, you supplemented it, right?
I did.
And when we watched the video, that was, and Investigator Leinfelder was reading parts of that statement. That was all accurate. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, it was all accurate, yes.
I'm asking the clerk.
Exhibit number 8.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I am handing what has been marked as Exhibit 89 to Ms. Phillips. Your Honor, the parties had previously stipulated to use an agreed upon transcript for the purposes of Investigator Leinfelder's interview. Is there any objection to me using that throughout my cross?
I agree that it's authentic.
Go ahead, then.
Ms. Phillips, what can you tell me about the camera system? What was your understanding of the camera system as it existed between February 22nd and February 23rd? And I'm asking in terms of how it functioned, what it did.
I mean, it was a camera system that recorded movements.
Okay. So it recorded movements and you indicated you could live view it. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Ms. Phillips, again, you've had the opportunity, or you've sat through every witness that we've had here
I have.
in trial, and you've seen every piece of evidence that's been presented. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you were paying attention?
Yes.
Would you agree, I guess, I'm asking specifically about the timeline aspect of this case, that there are a lot of moving parts in this case.
Yes.
We have the 2 hotels. We have 2 or 3 bars. We've got your house, right?
Correct.
We've got other locations, correct?
Correct.
We've heard all sorts of texts,
Yes.
internet searches,
Yes.
other things that I'm probably forgetting about, but I mean, you would agree that there's a lot there to that, is that correct?
Yes.
Or would you agree?
I agree.
Okay. Up until this point, do you have any issue with the times of things that have been presented in terms of text messages
No.
or the coming and going from the bar as far as timestamps we've seen?
I don't believe so.
And the arming, disarming, or viewing of security cameras?
No.
Do you recall speaking with Investigator Leinfelder about the security cameras as they were armed or disarmed on February 22nd, 2019?
Do I recall talking to him? I don't know if I recall, but I mean, I can go back to the notes.
Okay. Can you please turn your attention on the exhibit that's been handed to you to line 114?
Okay.
I'm starting with Investigator Leinfelder, and so let me do some more checking. Is it your statement, I just hope the cameras were on? I mean, I don't know if they were or not, I have no idea. Is that an accurate reflection of that, or?
You said 114?
Yeah,
It's
I'm
not
confused.
one. Yeah.
What page?
So Judge, I'm using the line number on the right-hand side.
Okay, explain it to the witness. I don't have it, so I don't know what you're referring to.
But where are you at? 1014.
Yes. I think I might have figured out the problem. Ms. Phillips, can you hold up that exhibit, please?
Hold it up?
Yes. So I'm looking at the lines on the left-hand side. 1000, 1014.
Oh,
Sorry.
hold on. Where Fritz says, and so let me do some more checking?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the 1015, Lori Phillips, I just hope the cameras were on. I mean, I don't know if they were or not. I have no idea.
Correct.
And then at 1018, do you say, I'm assuming they were if I had to turn the cameras off to come home?
Correct.
So you had armed the cameras at 11:08 p.m., is that correct?
If that's what the time was, yes. And obviously when I did all this, I wasn't thinking clearly, so,
So you weren't thinking clearly.
correct.
So when you were asked that question, you just didn't remember.
No, I just assumed that if I had to turn them off, that they were on.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
So you don't recall turning them on at 11:08 the night before, or you didn't recall them when you spoke to Investigator Leinfelder?
Correct. When I talked to Investigator Leinfelder, I didn't remember that part, correct.
Okay. And you didn't remember checking the live feeds?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. To me, it made sense when I talked to him that if I had to disable the cameras to go home, that they were on. That's what I'm saying.
So I guess, is it your hope then when you made that statement that the cameras were on during the incident with the driveway? Is that?
I was hoping they were on, correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Because when you spoke with Investigator Leinfelder, you didn't remember that you yourself had armed them at 11:08.
that is correct.
Had you calmed down by that point? And by calm down, I'm referring to, I'll ask that in a different way. We saw you were emotional when the arrival on scene. We saw you were emotional at the house.
Correct?
And that was understandable because as you testified, you just discovered your husband's.
Correct.
Did you, I guess, have an opportunity? What was your emotional state during the interview with Investigator Leinfelder?
I mean, obviously I was still shook up, but I was trying to give him what he needed so I could go back home and be with my family.
Okay. Is it safe to say that you were at least more calm when you met with Investigator Leinfelder?
At the Holmen Police Department, yes. Like I said, I wanted to give him as much information as I could so I could go.
And you had already spoken to friends and family at that point?
Yes, I had people at the home.
And your friend Kimmy is the one who drove you? Touching up on the end of your testimony, your direct examination, sorry. We saw pictures of the bruises again, and you remember that?
Yes.
The picture of the one on your leg, didn't you indicate yesterday that that was from you slipping out of the truck or hitting that footrail or something?
I said that could be the possibility from that one, yes.
Okay, so you didn't specifically say that that was not Mr. Phillips?
I said it could have been from the step rail.
Ms. Phillips, I want to walk you through different things we've kind of heard about throughout your direct examination. Starting at Sloopy's. That was the first place that everyone had went to. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And you had went to Sloopy's with Hannah. Hannah and Adam Stevens were there? Hannah and Adam Stevens were at Sloopy's?
They met us there, correct.
Okay, and that was early.
That was early.
And is that when everyone had started drinking?
Yes.
And did that include yourself?
Yes.
But everything at Sloopy's was okay?
Everything at Sloopy's was great.
And you went to the dive bar at about what time?
I want to say the drawing was at like 7 maybe, so we would have gotten there probably right before that.
And at what point in the dive bar did things, I guess, start to escalate with Mr. Phillips?
I mean, I don't know time-wise, but it would have been when we met up with Scott Cundy.
Okay. So you don't remember the exact time?
No. No.
Do you recall when the first incident of physical violence was with Mr. Phillips? About when?
Time?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
When we left the bar.
Okay. The dive bar?
The first time we left the dive bar, yes.
Okay, so the first time you left the dive bar, that is the first incident of physical violence with Mr. Phillips?
Correct.
And not to make you just retestify from yesterday, but what was the first time he put hands on you that night? The one you're talking about right now at the dive bar?
When he brought me back to the dive bar.
So you're at the dive bar at this point, or you've left the dive bar?
The first time Mark put hands on me is when he brought me back to the dive bar.
Okay. And that was in the truck or outside the truck?
In the truck.
Okay. And it was parked? The truck was parked?
Yes.
And at this particular time, can you remind me this particular incident, what he had done?
That's when he jumped over on top of me and was strangling me and yelling at me and on top of me.
So you're in the passenger seat,
I'm in the passenger seat. He jumped over from the driver's side.
from the driver's seat.
Correct.
Okay. And I want to clarify kind of, when you said strangled, I can't do it as well as Mr. Zacher, so correct me, but I guess it was like a forearm hold or it was a choke hold, or I didn't understand that. Could you please describe it for me?
He was using his forearm.
So you use his right forearm or his left forearm? Don't know.
I have no idea.
Was Mr. Phillips right or left-handed?
He was right-handed.
Okay. So he uses his forearm, and that goes up against your neck area, is that?
Correct.
Okay. And then he, applies pressure?
Yes.
Okay. And you're being pushed into the door?
No, in between the seats. Like, he's actually pushing me towards his side, his seat. It was in between the seats. Not towards the door.
So, okay. So I think if I understand correctly, so he has actually gotten out of the driver's seat and is on top of you at this point?
Correct.
Okay. So he's on top of you, pushing backwards towards in between the seats, towards his side?
Correct.
Okay. And then after that, you exit the car or the truck, and then that's when you go back into the dive bar, or is that?
Correct.
Okay. So, Ms. Phillips, after the dive bar, I guess, and like I said, there's a lot of moving parts in this case. I'm trying to figure out, and again, not to just make you retestify. So at this point, how inebriated do you think Mr. Phillips is?
Okay, the first time when we came back to the dive bar, you mean?
I'm talking
When?
right after he gets out of the truck. That he just had this incident where he used his forearm, got on top of you, and applied pressure to your neck.
He didn't get out of the truck then, but how inebriated do I think he was?
Mm-hmm.
Clearly more so than I thought, but I mean, I don't know how you want me to monitor that.
So you remember answering Mr. Zacher's questions? His
Yes.
yes.
Your Honor, can we approach?
These are your questions.
We need to approach.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, Ms. Phillips, during your testimony yesterday, you made a lot of representations about how inebriated Mr. Phillips was, what you thought about it, what that meant to you, things like that. Do you recall that?
I recall saying that Mark's a different person when he's drunk, if that's what you're referring to.
You refer, he's a different person, and, there's different levels of inebriation. Do you remember that for him?
Yeah, I mean, there's like buzzed and then there's drunk, yes.
So, yeah, buzzed drunk is fun, buzzed Mark
Yes.
is fun Mark,
Yes,
and drunk Mark is a problem,
correct,
and Mark who does shots is a problem.
100%.
And Mark, I guess at some point when you said is annihilated, that was a problem.
Absolutely.
And at some point at the dive bar, he gets, per your words, annihilated. Is that correct?
I would say that would be at the end after like even doing shots and continuing to drink, yes.
Okay. So you have an understanding, based on the scale that we've just talked about, how drunk Mr. Phillips is? At any, you know, at time. I mean, you know indicators, you know the way he looks, you know the way he smells, you know the different way he starts talking to you. I mean, things like that, right?
That is correct.
So at this particular time, how inebriated do you think he is?
Well, okay, so I would say he was drunk, but I've seen him much drunker before at that point.
Okay.
Because sober Mark wouldn't have done that.
Sober Mark wouldn't have done that.
Correct.
And now he has put hands on you. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at this point, who's all at the bar?
Inside the bar?
Yes.
Hannah and Adam and Hannah's family.
Okay. And
Others that I don't, I mean, obviously that I don't know.
Ms. Klinsky had testified that there was about 150 people at the dive bar. Is that correct?
I think she may have over-exaggerated when I look at the videos.
So you're looking at the video of just the part where the family's sitting. You're talking about that.
That whole section, correct.
Okay. So there's for sure not 150 people there. We all saw that, right?
Correct.
But the dive bar, I mean, I guess we agreed for the sake of time not to show out all the video, but it's a bigger structure, or it was a bigger structure, correct?
Yeah, there was another side to it, correct.
So there's multiple drawings?
No, there was one drawing.
Okay. So throughout that building, I mean, was there more people throughout the building?
Than just what we saw in video, yes.
Okay.
I just don't believe that there was 150 people.
Okay. And when did Mr. Phillips start, I guess, yelling and screaming at you? Are we at that point yet, or is that later?
Well, that would have been before. No, I'm sorry. That would have been when he came back in, yes. Well, actually, the beginning when he was yelling and screaming would have been after talking to Scott Cundy.
Okay.
I apologize.
So after talking to Scott Cundy, that's when the yelling and screaming starts.
Yes.
Is Terry LaFleur in the picture yet at this point?
No, he hadn't gotten there yet, no.
Okay. So this is just Scott Cundy, and he's screaming at you. Mr. Phillips is.
Yes.
Okay. And from that point, for the rest of the evening that you spend with him, he is, I guess, it's not the last time he screamed at you, correct?
No.
And he continued to scream at you throughout the bar?
In different areas, yes.
And there's that one period where you talked about he sends you the apology text, things seem okay, and then, I mean, I guess other than that period, is he screaming at you consistently? Are you arguing consistently?
Yeah, that was the only time that he was actually calmed down that I could tell.
Okay.
Well, I mean, so after the text message for a short time.
Okay. And that was at about 8:52 p.m.
That's when I believe I got the text message, correct.
Okay. And you remember you didn't respond to that text message because you were mad?
I didn't respond. You're correct.
Okay.
I was disappointed. I was mad and disappointed, yes.
Okay. Can you please look at the exhibit, I think line 426.
Okay.
Does it say, I mean, can you read that for me?
The 426?
Yep. Or no, excuse me, 428.
I didn't respond because I was so pissed off.
And line 426, when it says, you indicated, he was always sorry, he had texted me immediately, I'm so sorry, that's the text you're referring to.
The text I was referring to is he said, I'm so sorry, I love you.
Okay, the one at 8:52.
Whenever it was, yes, correct.
Okay. So, not disappointed, you told investigator Leinfelder because you're pissed.
I was very disappointed with my husband as well.
Okay. So after he sends the apology text and things are at the bar, I guess what happens next?
I told Adam and Hannah that I thought that he had calmed down and that if they wanted to go, they could go.
Okay, so you flagged off, I guess, called off Miss Klinsky and Mr. Stevens.
I did.
And the rest of the family?
I mean, I had nothing to do with the rest of the family.
Okay.
I don't know what they did.
Didn't we hear something, I guess, did you hear something about that, I guess, Bob Klinsky or Miss Klinsky's father or stepfather, he didn't try to talk to you at all?
He did, yes.
Okay. Did he try to intervene? I thought we heard something about that. Is that your memory?
Well, that is what it appears to be. I don't remember what Bob said to me. I saw him come over and give me a hug, and then kind of look over at Mark, like I saw, thinking he was maybe trying to intervene, but I honestly don't remember what Bob said to me that night.
Okay, so he actually didn't attempt to intervene.
Did you say did or did not?
Did not.
No, I think he did. I think
Okay.
he did.
But you felt safe.
When Bob was trying to intervene?
Yes.
Oh, after Mark sent me the text, but this is you're talking about two different periods right now.
Oh, okay.
So that's where it's a little confusing.
So Bob Klinsky, that is his name, right?
Bob is Hannah's dad, but he was over when Mark was doing all the flailing and
Okay.
that's when Bob came over.
So that's earlier.
That's
right?
earlier.
And that's when
Correct.
he's still screaming and everything else?
Yes.
Okay. And the period afterwards, where you then let everybody know, towards the end of the night, them being Hannah and Adam, that they can go to Winona, that's later.
Correct.
And then, and Mr. Klinsky, Bob Klinsky, he went with them as well, correct?
No. He lives in La Crosse, so he went to the gun with them.
So he stayed at the bar.
I don't know what he did. I honestly don't know. That's when I was over on the other side with my husband.
Okay.
I don't know what they did
So at that point, it's just you and Mr. Phillips at the bar?
with whomever he was talking to.
Okay.
Her family could have still been there, but I don't know.
And-
We're going to take a 5-minute break, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to take a 5-minute break, okay? All right. Everybody may be seated. Continue, Mr. Burdick. Go ahead. Thank you.
Ms. Phillips, my memory is that we were left off at the dive bar. Is that your understanding?
Okay.
I'm going to ask this as open-ended. Is there, I mean, in terms of before we had taken a brief break there, is there anything that you remember, I guess, in terms of where we left off or the question you were answering or anything that we missed? I'm asking an open-ended question that I don't remember where we are, and I'm giving you an opportunity to fill in the blanks if I miss something.
Judge, I'm going to object as to the form of vagueness and just ask that the state focus on an individual topic across.
Yeah. Are you saying, is she asking her if she missed anything that happened at the dive bar?
No, Your Honor. I'm asking if Ms. Phillips, during the course of her last testimony, if there's something that we missed in terms of that she had more to say. Just
Too
go
vague.
on. Okay.
Specific. Yep. Go ahead.
Ms. Phillips, I briefly want to understand Mr. Phillips' I guess, jealousy. When you spoke with Investigator Linefelder, can I direct your attention to line 414 on the exhibit that's been handed to you?
Okay.
When you had indicated, referring to Mr. Phillips, so he always explained it so that I could try to understand it. He said, if I ever feel like someone's trying to take you from me, is that referring to his jealousy?
Correct.
Is that referring to his possessiveness?
Well, he would say, if anyone's ever trying to take you from me or if you leave me. So I didn't get the second half of that in there, I see.
And at line 417, you continue, or I'm going to lose you. Are you still referring to Mr. Phillips?
That's what I was talking about.
And then when you
yes.
say, he goes, I can't control what happens in my mind. He says, I can't help it. I can't help it. So when that happens, we just have to deal with it. And I'm just like, I just can't even believe that he makes these things up in his head. Is that still referring to Mr. Phillips?
Correct.
And at line 421, that he gets in his head and he can't let it go. Is that still referring to Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a fair description? I mean, is that accurate? Is that a fair description of his jealousy
Yes.
and his possessiveness?
I mean, I don't really like the word possessive, but
Okay.
I mean, that
Use
is,
instead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
he was just worried that if anybody was ever going to take me away, he'd say, or if I ever left him.
Oh.
Plain and simple, those two things.
Okay. So he was afraid of losing you.
Yes.
And in fact, we heard a lot of testimony from different parties regarding that he was fearful of losing you. Is that right?
That we heard that he was,
Judge,
I'll just
mischaracterizing the, yeah.
I'll just re-ask, strike that question from the record, please. So when he's afraid of losing you, that's why he is jealous of other guys, right?
correct,
And that's why Terry LaFleur, I guess, was a problem here.
correct,
And you had nothing to do with Terry LaFleur, other than an acquaintance, right?
never, correct,
But in Mr. Phillips' mind, he made this, I guess, can I call it delusional connection? Is that correct?
I would agree with that, yes.
And this delusional connection is that, I mean, he saw just some random dude at the bar, right?
Well, Terry wasn't there. Terry wasn't there yet.
So, go ahead.
Scott said Terry was coming, so Mark assumed that either Scott called him and said, hey, Lori Phillips is here. Lori, he would have said Lori Gamoki, come to the bar. That's Mark's interpretation in my mind. But in fact, I believe that they had plans all along for Terry to come and meet Scott Cundy for drinks that night at the dive bar. Had nothing to do with us.
Okay. So when Mr. Phillips started getting mad about that, I mean, Mr. LaFleur wasn't even there.
Correct.
And Mr. Phillips didn't even know Mr. LaFleur, did he? Or do you know that?
I don't think he did, no.
So the only connection between Terry LaFleur and his jealousy in that is what, the Chapter 2 days thing?
Can you reword that?
I can. That his connection to Terry LaFleur is that he thought Mr. LaFleur knew you from, I guess, bartending days.
Okay, so you're talking about Scott Cundy. So yes, Scott Cundy said that of course you would know him because he used to bartend at Ghost Chapter 2, correct?
Okay. And that Chapter 2 connection, that's what made Mr. Phillips mad?
No. No. So
Go ahead.
So when Scott said, of course you know Terry, and then I was like, whoa, 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 what does that mean? I've never been with him. He's like, no, he used to bartend at Chapter 2. My ex-in-laws owned a Ghost Chapter 2, so I bartended there as well. So that's how he thought I knew him.
So what I'm trying to understand is, I guess, let me ask you this. There were over 100 people at the bar.
I don't even believe that, no. I mean, there was people at the bar, but I don't believe there were 100.
How about 50?
I would say 50 would be good.
So there's 50 people at the dive bar.
Throughout the entire bar, I would say yes.
Okay, and there are other men at the bar, is that accurate?
I'm sure yes.
And we saw the video, right?
Yes.
And we saw all sorts of other, I mean, there's the guy with the $14.99 something shirt. We saw other people at the bar.
Okay, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, we saw other people at the bar, yes.
What was the connection to the, as you understand it, between Terry LaFleur and Mr. Phillips? So what about Mr. LaFleur do you think made Mr. Phillips so mad?
It was the way Scott said it. He said, of course you know who he is. That is what triggered my husband.
Okay. So it's that, I guess that context clue.
Correct.
Okay. I want to direct your attention to line 433. Ms. Phillips, you stated to Investigator Leinfelder, he's always told me I would never, ever hurt you ever. Is that referring to Mr. Phillips?
Correct.
So, like, I couldn't even believe it. That's referring to the physical attack that you experienced at the dive bar, right?
Correct.
And I'm not even gonna lie, I made a scene outside. I'm like, you know what? You put your hands on me, I'm done. I'm never ever, I'm done with you. You just go live your life, go. And that's when he stormed off or took the truck and just peeled away. Is that referring to Mr. Phillips?
Correct.
Okay. I want to understand your emotion there. What is going through your head? I mean, at that moment.
When I'm talking to Fritz,
Nope. So the moment, I guess that question refers to a moment, right?
that I talked to Fritz, Mr. Leinfelder, excuse me.
Did you make a scene at the bar?
No, so outside, I raised my voice to try to attract attention, yes.
Okay, so that's when you raised your voice.
That is correct.
And that was because I think I heard that 2 people were in the parking lot.
I don't know how many people were in the parking lot, but there were people out there, yes. They were smoking.
You yourself
remember
saw
right.
somebody,
People were outside smoking, yes.
and you were hoping to get their attention.
That is correct.
And you were hoping to get their attention because you wanted their help, right?
Yes.
And when you told Investigator Leinfelder, I'm like, you know what, you put your hands on me, I'm done, I'm done with you, you just go live your life, go. Who are you referring to?
That's me talking to Mark, but I think that was in my head.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
So that's what you're
I
thinking.
didn't say that to Mark. I apologize. I didn't mean to overtalk.
I'll rephrase that last part of the question, and I will also try not to interrupt you or anything like that. I guess I apologize if I did. Where did you leave off? That's going through your head? That statement, the one that I had read, that's the feeling that is going through your head at that moment.
Correct.
Okay. So did you actually yell that?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I guess, What did you yell to the people you were trying to get help from?
I was like, you've done enough tonight, stop. That's what I raised my voice and said.
So you directed that at Mr. Phillips,
Yes,
but you said it loud enough to try to get somebody else's attention. Is that the idea?
correct.
Okay. What happens next?
To my conversation with Mr. Leinfelder, or when I go in the bar? Or wait, that's the
What
end
happens
of the
next
night.
at the bar?
Judge, I guess I'm going to object and ask the state to clarify at what point we're actually at.
Yeah, Mr. Burdick, please be a little bit more specific about your questions so that the witness and we know what you're talking about. Go ahead, you can ask specific questions. You're on cross, go ahead.
You're in the parking lot. You just tried to, the point at the parking lot where you just tried to get somebody's attention. What happens after that?
That is when Mark physically walked me across, well, first pushed me, because that's the part, when I was leaving. And Mark came out and busted me leaving, so then I parked the truck and got out, and that's when Mark assaulted me again, and then walked me around and put me into the truck.
Okay. And at some point, you were communicating or getting calls from Adam Stevens. Is that accurate?
Not, I don't think when I was with Mark I did.
Okay.
And if I did, then I forgot that. After that, I did.
How about this? I'll focus on, can you please turn to 522? Line number 522.
Okay. Okay. That's a totally different time.
It is.
Yes.
And you told Investigator Leinfelder, I took the phone and I said, leave Stevens out of this, quit calling Stevens.
That is correct.
Who are you talking to?
Mark,
And you're talking to him in person or you're talking to him on the phone?
I'm talking to him on Adam Stevens' phone from when my husband was calling Mr. Stevens 3 or 4 times in a row.
And you're mad?
I didn't understand why he would bring somebody in from the outside. I just said, leave him out of this.
So were you embarrassed?
That was very embarrassing that he continued to call my friend.
So you're embarrassed because Mr. Phillips is calling your friend Adam Stevens.
To tell me to talk me into getting in the truck with him.
And you didn't want that information known.
I wanted him to leave Stevens alone, is what I wanted.
Okay.
He shouldn't have ever involved him.
And are you disappointed or are you mad or what's the emotion?
I was just like, leave him alone. Stop calling him. Like, quit bugging him. So my emotion, I guess I would be upset, I guess. And embarrassed.
Ms. Phillips, do you agree that you left the dive bar for the last time at about 10:09 p.m.?
According to what I remember Mr. Leinfelder saying and seeing, I believe, video footage, yes.
Okay. And then you and Mr. Phillips, you had one more fight in the parking lot after you left or no?
When we left for the final time, that was the fight that we just discussed
Okay. At the dive bar.
at the dive bar.
And then you go, I guess, took about a minute, 2 minutes? When did you get back in your car, the truck,
From when we left,
the dive bar?
I mean, a few minutes.
Okay.
It was 5 years ago. I mean, I don't really remember how long it was, but we were out there for a couple minutes for sure.
More than 5?
I don't think so.
Less than 5?
I would say so.
And then did you and Mr. Phillips go straight home from there?
Yes,
And he's driving?
correct.
And you were in the passenger seat?
That is correct.
And he's screaming at you at this point?
He was bringing up Terry LaFleur again, yes.
Is he screaming at you, or is he bringing him up, or is he speaking to you?
No, he was definitely yelling, correct.
And do you go straight home?
We did go straight home.
And I believe I heard, or do you agree with Deputy Sloan's assessment that it takes about a half an hour to get from the dive bar to your home?
I would agree with that.
So it's about, would you say, 10:42 to 10:45 when you and Mr. Phillips pull in the driveway?
Sure.
Do you agree with that?
Sure was affirmative, but yes.
When do you take off your ring and give it to Mr. Phillips?
On the ride home.
On the ride home.
Mhm.
So he's driving, and go ahead.
Correct, yes.
And how do do you put it in the cup holder? Do you hand it to him? Do you put it in the glove box? Where do you physically put that ring?
I handed it to him.
What did he do with it?
I said, I don't want this. And he put his hand out and he took, well, I can't remember if he said this at first, but he said, please, please don't give that back to me. And then maybe took it. I don't know if I just continued to hold it out there for him. I just remember he took it.
Was that sadness you saw from him, or anger, or what do you think his emotion was?
Objection, speculation.
I think we heard testimony on it yesterday.
If she can talk about her observations, go ahead.
Your observations.
When he said, please, please don't give that back to me, I mean, he wasn't screaming at me at that point. He was being genuine.
And did he stop screaming after that point? During the ride home?
No, I'm fairly positive that it continued. I mean, as far as I remember, it continued the whole ride home except for that short little point of giving him the ring back.
Do you know how long that short little point was?
I mean, it was just, I handed it to him and I said, like, here, I don't want this, or I'm done, or something like that. And he said, please, please don't give that back to me. And then ended up taking it because I guess I just continued to hold it out to him.
So you're holding it? I guess hold it out to him. What do you mean by that?
Holding my ring. I took my ring off and gave it to him.
And he never took it?
He did take it.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you get to the driveway, you pull up to the driveway at the residence.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah, at some point, yes.
Okay. And he goes inside first?
He did go inside first.
Okay. How is his emotional demeanor? What are you observing at that time when he walks in that door?
I mean, he just took off. So, I mean, I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know if he really had to go to the bathroom quickly but I mean, come to find out that he went straight to the safe to put my ring in there.
Okay. So he took off, so he's traveling at a faster than normal speed? Is that what you mean by that?
I mean, I don't remember. I just remember he took off because he's right there. The vehicle was parked right where he could just get right out, whereas I had to go around. And so he beat me in the house. That's all I can say.
Does he slam the door, throw the door open, anything like that?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember at that point.
And you indicated that he went to the safe.
He did go to the safe to put my ring in there, yes, and lock it in there.
Okay. Where's the safe?
In the bedroom.
The master bedroom.
Correct.
And you go inside to put some seltzers in and get your contacts, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is it safe to say the contacts were in your bathroom, or were they somewhere else?
Yeah, they were in my bathroom.
Okay. At what point did you make the decision that you're truly going to leave?
I knew when I was going home I was truly leaving. I'm sure he knew that as well.
So on the way home, you had already made up the decision, I'm gone.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you gave him the ring back.
I did.
And that was because, I guess, were you intending to end your marriage, or?
I was letting him know that his actions were significant enough for me to just give up that night.
Okay. Did you have the keys to the truck, or were they still in the truck?
We both have keys.
Okay, so you both have keys.
Correct.
Were yours on your person, or did you have to get those from inside?
No, they would have been in my purse because I always have my keys with me to be able to get in and out of the house.
Okay. So you have your keys, you had them in your purse on you.
Correct.
Okay. And you went inside to put the seltzers away?
He had already been inside. The door was already open.
So the door to the house is open,
Correct.
and you have the keys outside.
I have my keys. He has keys and I have keys.
So I guess, Ms. Phillips, at this point, safety is your sole priority. That's what you said when we had started. Is that accurate?
When leaving, yes. When I left that night, yes.
And this is the point in the night where you have made up the decision to leave and you are going to leave. Is that correct?
Well, I had made that decision driving home. Yes.
And you had already experienced a Mr. Phillips that you had never seen before.
Well, I mean, the worst part is yet to come. I mean, we still had another argument yet.
You're talking about in the driveway.
Correct.
Okay, that's the worst.
Well, that's where Mr. Phillips, as we're going to call him, it was the most upset, I would say.
So that is the worst is yet to come in terms of his emotional state. Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean, I may have misspoke. I mean, I'm saying that we were not done yet for the night, so it still got worse.
And it got worse after he went inside. And then,
Correct, when he came back out, correct.
so when you say the worst is yet to come, I mean, at that point, it was physically worse much earlier, right?
Physically worse much earlier. Mark was the most upset when I was leaving.
Okay, and that's the most upset you've ever seen him,
Ever,
ever.
ever.
And did that surprise you?
What do you mean by that?
Did him being the most upset you've ever seen him, was that surprising to you?
Objection, relevance.
Sustain. If you can just keep things moving, go ahead.
Okay. So, Ms. Phillips, I want to direct your attention to line 594.
Okay.
Investigator Leinfelder, when he starts the driver's side door, can you review that section of the transcript and confirm that we are talking about the incident in the driveway?
Yeah, I can tell by my information above what we're talking about, yes. So yes, the driver's side door meant the driver's side door.
And at 597, you indicate, and he said, well, I'm going to get my stuff then. Is that referring to Mr. Phillips?
That is correct.
And I said, take your stuff that you want, take it. That's also referring to Mr. Phillips.
Correct.
You told Investigator Leinfelder that Mr. Phillips said that.
He wanted to get his stuff out of the truck, correct? If I was going to take the truck, he wanted all of his personal items out.
And then at line 615 and 616, I'm starting at 615. Can you direct yourself there?
I'm there.
Investigator Linefelder, okay, so then you got in the driver's side, and that's when he came out and was going to hit the window again. Okay, and then he said, I'm going to get my stuff out.
Correct.
Okay. And you, at line 617, confirmed that,
Correct.
because that's accurate.
Yeah.
You didn't indicate that Mr. Phillips is screaming at you?
At that point, when he got over there, he was saying some things. But when he came out, he came out with the fist and then realized that I was absolutely leaving then. And then something clicked and he's like, let me get my stuff out if you're taking, which it was my truck, not his, but he was the one who drove it.
So when you say that was the worst you've ever seen him, I'm trying, I guess, what indicators of that? What made you come to that conclusion?
Sure. So he was saying, so when he got over there and he was going through all of the stuff in the truck, he was like, just so you know, I'm changing the locks. He was saying so many things He was trying to hurt me by saying things. And then, that he was going to go to a bar and go pick up some chicks or whatever wording he used for that. I might not be using his exact words, but I'm telling you what he said.
Okay, so he was saying mean things.
He was saying mean things.
And he was degrading you.
Yes, and then the can koozie with the breast sign it and threw it at me and said, this is all you're good for.
And you took that to mean, a pair of breasts? That's all you're good for? Is that what you took that to mean?
Or sex or something.
Okay, but you took that to mean he was degrading you.
Yeah.
And he has said mean things to you, he has degraded you, he has said that he is going to change the locks. All of those things are what you're referring to as the worst you've ever seen.
Well, after the phone dropped and I looked at him, that's the most angry I've ever seen him.
So the phone dropped. You're talking about when you had the phone and you dropped it because you were going to put the cameras on.
Right, when he tried to take it out of my hands, correct.
And is that when you yelled at him, I hope the cameras are on, or when did you do that?
No, when he came out with his fist out.
Which is after what we're talking about now, the degrading comments, the going through his stuff, things like that.
That would be before. That'd be before.
I'm going to clarify my own question to make sure that I am understanding
Okay.
you. The comments are before the phone and the camera.
Me saying I hope that the cameras are on is when he came out with the fist like he was going to punch the truck window again, or me, or whatever he was going to do.
When he came out of the house or when he came around the truck?
When he came out of the house.
So at that point, he had already suspected something about the cameras, or no?
Objections calls for speculation.
Yeah, sustained.
Okay. So something clicked in Mr. Phillips. That's when he became the worst you've ever seen him.
When he clicked, it was, wait a minute, if you're leaving, I want to get my stuff. That's when it went from coming out to punch whatever he was going to punch, whether it be the window or myself, and then realize I was absolutely leaving. I think it was a stall method on his part that said, wait a minute, I want all of my stuff out of the truck.
So it's while he's going through the stuff in the truck. That is the worst you've ever seen him.
The most angry I've ever seen him is when the phone fell onto the ground.
Okay. And that's when he goes around the truck.
That is correct.
Okay. And we've heard testimony now from yourself, from others, that you have been choked, right?
I have.
And you've been hit?
I've never been hit. He's
Never
never
been hit.
punched me.
But, but he's grabbed you enough to leave bruises, right?
Correct.
And he's forced your head under the seat of the truck that night,
It wasn't under the seat. It was between the seats.
between the seats. He used physical force against you in the truck.
Correct.
And at some point, we heard testimony that he had broken into your place.
Several times.
And we heard, I mean, horrible things that he said. I'm not comfortable even saying them, but I mean, the N-word and stuff like that. We heard all that, correct?
Yes.
But this, in that moment, is when he goes around that truck, when something clicks, that is the angriest you've ever seen him.
The look I saw in him, yes. He was very upset.
Okay. So we're talking about a period of time when he goes from the passenger seat to your driver's side window.
Correct.
How many seconds is that?
2 to 3. I don't know. It's just running around the truck.
So what is the look? I guess describe the look. Describe the worst you've ever seen him. Is he yelling? Is he fuming? Is he?
No, so when I had my phone, and then when he jumped to grab it and it fell, as soon as it fell, I was like, oh no. I look at him and he had this just evil look, and that's just when he just tore off, and I was like, oh my God.
So it was a look.
It was an absolute look, yes. Was he screaming then? No, not that I recall. I just remember him just immediately coming at me or coming for me.
But it was that look that he gave you was the true worst you've ever seen him.
It's the scariest I've ever seen my husband, correct.
But he runs around the truck. Does he have his fist up? Is that when he, I guess, do you remember that? Or what's he doing when he's running around the truck?
Does he have his fist up? I don't think so. I mean, he's running around it happened in a matter of seconds. I don't know.
I mean, does he have the same evil look on his face?
He was very upset, yes.
Okay. Do you remember? Can you answer? How does he walk around the truck?
He didn't walk around the truck. He ran around the truck.
He ran around the truck. And Miss Phillips, that's when you took off.
After he cleared the front and he was by my door, yes.
Okay. And you indicated, I'm looking at line 621.
Okay.
Investigator Leinfelder, so then I was just like, F this, and I was out, I'm gone, right?
What line are you on?
621 to 623.
I don't have that. Oh, I see it. I'm sorry. I found it. I apologize. Can you ask your question again? I'm sorry.
I can. So you're describing to Investigator Leinfelder, so then I was just like, F this, and I was out, I'm gone, right?
Correct. I left.
I'm sorry, did you finish your answer?
I said I left.
And you described that again, this is, he's at the door. Mr. Phillips is at your driver's door.
Correct.
Did he reach up to open the driver's side door?
That's what he would have been going for, yes.
Okay.
I couldn't exactly see Mark with how dark it was outside, but I know that he had cleared the door or cleared the front and was coming at my door.
And correct me if I'm wrong, did you indicate previously or somewhere that I guess you couldn't get the locks working?
No. So when Mark started running over, I tried locking. I was like trying to lock the doors. I'm not familiar with the truck, so I continuously tried to lock, and I don't know if I ever got it locked or not.
Okay. Can you look at line 647?
Yes,
And then I was like, F this, and then I took off. We're still talking about that same moment.
correct, I did.
I'm asking to publish Exhibit 41. I,
So,
no, I don't. I'm just asking if I can publish it. And
it's the interior of the truck, is that correct?
Arlo,
It's the interior of the truck, correct?
yes.
All right, I think it's been published before, go ahead.
Ms. Phillips, I thought I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this the stuff Mr. Phillips was going through?
Correct.
So that stuff, that wasn't there when you drove home, right?
No, that's where I sat. when
Yeah,
we
because that's
drove
where you
home.
sat.
Yes.
Now, I would describe that as a lot of stuff. Would you describe that as a lot of stuff?
It was all in the middle console, correct. It's a lot of junk is what it is.
So all that stuff is in the center console.
Maybe he could have gone through the glove compartment. I don't remember. I think it was all in the center console, though.
So the center console, maybe the glove compartment, is there anywhere else you saw him go through?
No,
So Mr. Phillips is in the center console area getting this stuff.
correct.
And he's taking it out and he's putting it on the seat and you're watching him do this, right?
I think he was doing it like in clumps. I mean, I don't think he was taking things out individually.
And while he's doing it, this is when he's saying mean things to you?
Correct.
Okay. And about how far is he away from your person at this point?
As far away from my purse?
What's the distance?
Did you say?
What's the distance between you and Mr. Phillips at this moment when he's going through his stuff?
3 feet?
He's at the center console.
He's standing outside at this point, going through his stuff.
And when you have testified previously that he pushed you between the seats, you're talking about those two seats.
That is correct.
That is the driver's seat and the passenger seat.
That is correct.
So he is in between those two seats at the center console getting that stuff. Correct.
He wasn't, yeah, that's where he was reaching into, yes.
How long do you think it took him to get that stuff out?
How long was the delay is what I'll call it. I would say, I don't know, a couple minutes. I don't know.
Couple minutes.
That's a guess.
And you said you'll call it the delay. Why do you want to call it the delay?
Because I believe he was trying to delay me from leaving.
And is that where he got the HD bar chips?
He would have found the HD bar chips within that stuff somewhere, yes.
And that's when he's trying to verbally hurt you by saying he's going to go with other women.
Correct.
So, Ms. Phillips, can you direct your attention to line 908?
Okay.
He told me when he was taking his stuff out that he was going to go to HD. That's the HD Tavern, right?
That is correct.
So I assumed because he's like, you know what, I'm going to use these 2 bar chips that I have tonight. I'm like, you go ahead, Mark.
Correct.
Did you say that to Mr. Phillips?
I'm assuming I did if that's what I said in this.
You take off. And you go to the subdivision, right?
Correct.
Do you know where that subdivision is?
Yes.
Where?
Well, I mean, I could drive there. I mean, I know where it is. I don't know how to, it was down the road like 2 miles from what I understand.
What road is it on?
Well, it's off of, it would be, I don't know if it's M or W because it changes at some point. So M or W, it's off to the left.
Do you remember when
Going towards Holmen, excuse me.
Do you remember when Sergeant Valencia testified? Do
Yes,
you remember him talking about the 3 roads that could have been on the left there?
yes,
I think it was McCurdy,
yes.
Fryer,
Okay.
and then do you remember one other one? I started with an R. I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the roads are called. I have no idea. But it wasn't, it was literally 2 miles away.
You don't know what the roads are called.
No, I don't know what the side roads are called, no. McCurdy, I saw him point out. Then you said there was a Fryer or something. I'm not familiar with what they're called.
And that's the main road, right? The one that goes to your house?
No, that's County Road M or W. I think it starts with M and then goes to W. I'm not sure. It changes.
How many times do you think you've driven by that particular road while you were living at the residence?
What road?
The highway, the same highway that we saw Sergeant Valencia drive down in his initial squad video.
The county road?
Is
The,
that,
the highway?
I'll re-ask you. Ms. Phillips, are you familiar with the house you lived in?
Of course.
And you're familiar with the roads next to the house you lived in?
I don't know the names of the roads. No, I'm familiar with the main road getting to my house.
What is the highway, roadway, describe it how you want, that goes in front of your house, the one that connects to what we've been calling the W driveway?
Judge,
County
objection
Road
has
W.
Good relevance.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this is relevant. I mean, she's talked about the roadway. We have plenty of testimony about that. Go ahead.
Okay.
Move on.
So, Ms. Phillips, is it safe to say that you have thought of, discovered, considered other details that were not provided to Investigator Leinfelder? Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely.
And you got to that conclusion by reflecting,
Yes.
and you got to that conclusion by thinking with a clear mind?
Well, no, like for instance, one time he had asked me if I went in the house and I told him, no, I didn't think I went in the house that night. But then the next day when I opened my purse and saw my glasses and stuff, I was like, that's right. I did go in the house. I had forgotten. I did not remember going in the house at that point. So there's things like that.
Okay. But in all that time, you never thought about what road the subdivision was on?
Objection, relevance, argumentative.
Sustain.
Again, turn off the screen, please.
Based on what you saw Sergeant Valencia testify to, are you able to determine what road you were on?
Judge, objection, asked and answered.
She has testified to being 2 miles down in some subdivision. She
Okay.
doesn't know the roads. She has said that about 3 times now.
Okay.
And just to clarify, it's a newer subdevelopment, so I don't know the roads. I apologize.
Okay. So you're in the subdivision, you stop. Why do you stop?
Because I was waiting to see if my husband was chasing me.
Okay. And then you tried to look to see if he was there,
Look to-
chasing you.
Look to see if he was driving? Yes.
Okay. And while that happened, you told Investigator Leinfelder that you thought you saw a police officer. Is that correct?
I don't remember that. I said that there was maybe a vehicle. Yeah, you'll have to point me out on that.
Can I direct? Well, give me just a second. Can I direct your attention to line 198?
198?
198.
Okay.
And this car came up, and I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna be a cop, it's gonna be a cop, and I'm gonna get in trouble here because I had been drinking. So then I just like waited, and this car just pulled right into their driveway, right into their garage. So some white SUV, now do you remember?
So yes, there was a vehicle. I said, I didn't say it was a cop. I said it could have been.
But you were afraid that it was a cop.
Well, I was hoping it wasn't because I didn't, particularly want to be, I was sitting in a subdevelopment with my light sign, like, out of place.
You're sitting in a subdivision
Yes,
with your lights out of place. Your husband you're thinking he's gonna come after you.
correct.
And you're thinking he's gonna come after you because you just saw him act in what is the worst you've ever seen.
He was the most upset. I think you're taking my information out of context. I said the look on his face was the most upset I've ever seen my husband.
At this point, safety is your sole priority. That's what you said when we started. Do you remember that?
When I left the house, that is correct.
And you're in the subdivision that is about 2 miles down the road.
Correct.
And it took you approximately how long to get to the subdivision? Do you remember?
Well, if it's 2 miles away, I'm assuming just a few minutes.
And you saw a vehicle that could have been a law enforcement officer. Is that correct?
I saw a vehicle pull into the subdivision, yes.
And you told investigator Leinfelder that you were, I guess, worried it would be a cop. Is that correct?
I said it could have been a cop, yes.
And you weren't thinking about, thank God I'm rescued? That isn't what's going through your head?
No, actually, I was thinking about, oh my gosh, am I going to get in trouble for drinking and driving?
Okay. So you're worried about getting an OWI at that point, or drinking and driving as you called it.
Well, right. I shouldn't have been drinking or driving, correct?
Okay.
Together.
And I guess, are you still in fight or flight mode at this point, or?
I had already left, so I already had felt safer.
Okay, so you already felt safer.
After leaving, yes.
And at the time you're in the subdivision, you're now feeling safer.
I was not at home anymore with my husband, correct?
Okay. But you thought he was coming after you.
I didn't know if he was coming after me or if he was going to the bar or whatever he was doing.
Okay. And then when you found out it wasn't a law enforcement officer, it was just some person in their neighborhood, right?
That is correct.
You didn't flag that person down?
No,
You didn't try to call that person for help?
I wasn't being attacked or anything at that point.
Okay. And then at 10:57, do you agree that's when you sent the text, the "Have a nice life" from Bismarck that we've seen several times?
If that's what the time was stamped on,
And you sent that to Mr. Phillips.
correct.
And Mr. Phillips, well, let me rephrase that. 10:57, we agreed from our timeline that you got into your house at about 10:42 to 10:45,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Okay, sure, yes.
If you don't agree with that, disagree with that, and I'll move on. Do you agree with that?
I believe your time period is
Okay.
close, yes, I'm sure.
And then there's a period of time where Mr. Phillips goes in the house, correct, right?
Yes, when we first got back home, yes.
And then you testify that there is minutes that he is going through that center council trying to delay for time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then you leave the driveway and you go to the subdivision that is about 2 miles down the road, correct?
That is correct.
So 10:57, how long do you think, based on what we just walked through, that you've been in that subdivision?
You mean how long I was there altogether?
Between the time you got there and the time you sent that text at 10:57 to Mr. Phillips?
I don't, it was 5 years ago. I have no idea how long I was. I have no idea.
That's fine. So you send that text to Mr. Phillips. I thought I heard yesterday, I thought I heard you say yesterday that you sent that sarcastically. Did I hear that right? Is that wrong?
Judge,
No.
I object to mischaracterization.
I'm asking her to clarify.
She can clarify.
So I don't know, the ending part is what I was not sure. I don't remember if I was being facetious or if I was being genuine when it said good luck in Bismarck. I don't remember.
Okay. And you sent that text to Mr. Phillips, possibly facetiously, maybe 5 minutes after you had just had this incident?
The facetious part would have only been the last sentence.
I'm talking about the text itself.
Can you repeat the question, please?
You sent that text, that possibly facetious text, to Mr. Phillips within 5 minutes of leaving your driveway. Does that sound fair?
Potentially.
And you were trying to accomplish what by sending that text?
Letting him know I was not going with him.
And that's the same Mr. Phillips that is jealous.
That is jealous, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, he's jealous, correct?
And that's the same Mr. Phillips who, when I read you that quote about the description of him, can't let you go.
Well, he didn't want to lose me, if that's what you're saying.
Can't let you go, won't let you go. That's what puts him into this extra emotional, scary state, that and alcohol, correct?
Yes.
And you were afraid that that same man was chasing you or going to chase you.
Anytime we got into an argument, he used to chase me, yes, to try and make things better.
Okay. Were you trying to upset him? Were you trying to...
Why would I ever want to upset my husband?
I'm not answering the questions here.
Well, I'm telling you, I would never try and upset my husband if he's had been drinking.
Okay. And then that's about when you start texting Hannah, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And then at some point after that, that's when you go to the hotel?
After I left the subdevelopment, yes, I had gone to the first hotel, correct.
I guess which was the hotel that you, I guess, tried to book a room and it didn't work out?
That was the Baymont.
Okay. So the Baymont, and you were hoping to stay there for the night
Correct, so that was the second hotel.
because you weren't going home
Correct.
because home wasn't safe.
At the moment, that was correct.
At the moment, you were at the hotel.
At the moment that Mark would have still been awake.
I guess if you had been in the hotel, if you had gotten the room, would you have just stayed there?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that was the plan.
Yes.
Okay. And then when that failed, eventually Miss Klinsky and her family, she'd indicated that you could have gone to Winona, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't take her up on that offer?
Absolutely not, no.
Why not?
Because it would have upset my husband.
How so?
He actually didn't allow me to go to Winona without him.
Do you have any, I'm asking from the perspective of what you believe and experienced. How would he have found you in Winona?
What?
How would he have known you were in Winona if you chose to go that way?
I don't think that's the point. If I went to Winona and he found out, he would be very upset.
You're talking about him finding out the next day.
Correct.
But he wouldn't have been upset finding out that you were in a hotel?
Well, that's way better than me going to Winona.
Even when he's acting delusional and he's making weird connections?
There's no way I could go to Winona. I did what I was supposed to do and go try and book a hotel.
Okay. What you were supposed to do?
Well, it was not to go to Winona. I did the right thing.
I'm asking supposed to do per whom? Like,
For that, so that I wouldn't upset my husband.
so you're still worried about upsetting him at this point?
Of course.
Okay. And then, it was, I think, somewhere around midnight, you send him the physical abuse quote.
Okay. I mean, I know I did. I don't recall what time it was, but I know it's all been shown, so I'm going to take your word for it.
Okay. And the point of that quote was that you wanted him to self-reflect. Is that why you sent that?
That is correct.
And self-reflect when?
When he read it.
So when he read it, assuming it was received when you sent it, when he read it, that's when you wanted him to self-reflect.
Correct.
And that wouldn't have made him mad?
No. So Mark used to send me daily quotes. So, I mean, he would understand me sending him a quote. It's something we did daily.
So the inebriated Mr. Phillips, the annihilated Mr. Phillips, the bad Mr. Phillips, he would have understood that at that time.
It wouldn't have, I don't believe it would have upset him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have sent it.
Okay. So at this point, you've ended their marriage. You've caught it off, right? You've given him the ring back,
I did.
and you told him you're leaving.
That
Right.
he's leaving without me, and that, you mean to Bismarck?
And you just took the truck,
Mm-hmm.
his truck,
My truck.
your truck.
It's my truck.
Okay.
I bought it.
So are you referring to that you bought it or that you drove it?
I didn't drive, I bought the truck before Mark and I got married. It was in my name.
Okay, so it is your truck.
It is my truck, yes.
Okay. But he would drive it.
It's my truck that he drove, correct?
Okay. And he's in a incredibly heightened state. That's what we heard testimony about, right?
Which part are we talking about?
Okay, I'll move on.
Move on, please. Yep.
This crazy person, this version of Mr. Phillips, you thought he was going to self-reflect.
Yes, because we do quotes every day.
Okay. In that moment, in your answer, I'll move on. That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. So, Ms. Phillips, I want to just touch briefly on these cameras. So you pull up the camera at 11:08, right? That's when you arm it again. Is that correct?
That's when I'm what?
When you rearm the camera.
Okay, I mean, if that's what the reports say, sure. I mean, I don't know times from that night.
And it is your understanding that the camera, it's your understanding that the camera detects motion.
Correct.
And you wanted the camera on to make sure that no one was coming or going.
That is correct.
And that was specifically Mr. Phillips leaving or some other female from going?
From coming,
Coming.
yes.
Okay. So if someone had come in the driveway, the camera would have been set off, right?
Yes, I mean, there's been times where it hasn't gone off, but yes,
So why did you need to live stream it?
to see if there was any activity that I wasn't, wasn't caught on the camera. I can give you an example that Mr. Phillips, Mark's father, had pulled in one time to come get the trailer. And it was caught at the bottom that somebody pulled in backwards, and it woke me up. So I left my room and went out and didn't see anything else, but they were hooking up the trailer and leaving, and none of that was caught on camera.
Because it wasn't on or because it didn't see it?
It caught them backing up into the, so originally I thought somebody missed M or something, so they backed up and were gonna go out of our driveway to a spot that they may have missed pulling off. So I didn't think anything of it when I got up, and then, because I wasn't even really dressed, I saw two men outside hooking up a trailer, and none of that activity was on our cameras.
So that there's that one instance where the motion didn't pick it up? Is that what you're?
That I'm aware of.
Okay, that you're aware of. And then you check those cameras again at midnight?
Okay,
Around? And 1:35, right?
okay.
Okay. And you're at what point in the Woodman's parking lot, I guess, what's going through your head at this point?
I wasn't at the, well, I mean, so now I'm back at the Woodman's parking lot?
You're at the Woodman's parking lot, that is what I'm asking about.
Okay.
What is going through your head?
At that point that I wasn't going back home.
So at Woodman's, you still had made the determination that it was not safe.
Right. I was going to still try and sleep so that, until Mark could fall asleep.
At what point did you make the determination that it was safe from the Woodman's parking lot moving forward?
Okay, so I wasn't at the Woodman's parking lot. I was at the other parking lot. When I woke up and I was cold, I did search again for hotels that I must not have found anything. And after that is when I determined that Mark should probably be sleeping by now. I want to say it was like 2 something. So I figured even if he went out, he would have been home in bed, passed out by then.
Okay. Home in bed, not home in the man cave?
No, home in bed.
Okay.
He wouldn't sleep in the man cave if he had the whole house.
Okay. Because I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, that you had found him passed out in the man cave many times before. Is that
If
right?
if we had an argument, he would sleep in the man cave. But that's because I would be in the master.
Okay. So you did have an argument tonight, but he would not be there. Is that your understanding?
In the man cave?
Yes.
There would be no reason for him to be in the man cave when he's got the whole house, because I wasn't there.
So when you came home, you didn't check the man cave?
No.
Okay.
There would be no reason to check the man cave.
Did you check the garage? Right when you got home that night?
No,
Why?
because I saw his shoes inside the house.
So I want to make sure that I understand, well, before I move on. So you pull in the driveway, correct?
Correct.
And that's the W driveway, right?
The first driveway, correct.
And the garage we saw is right there. That's right?
Yes,
And the side door is also right there on the side of that garage.
correct.
You didn't check that garage when you got up to the driveway.
No, Mark would have been, if he went out, he would have been home by then. So I had no reason to check the garage.
And the dining room light was on, right?
The dining room light was on, yes.
And is that the big side windows that we saw on the W driveway in those pictures?
Yes,
So those lights are on,
correct.
and the door's unlocked.
The door was unlocked, yes.
And Mr. Phillips didn't lock that door,
Right, which is unusual.
and it was unusual.
Absolutely.
And you didn't think, this is strange, I should go check the garage.
Judge, objection, this implies a legal duty that hasn't been established.
Checking garage. Checking the garage, I'm not sure what legal duty there is there, but I'll let him ask the question. She didn't check the garage, if that's the answer. Go ahead.
That is correct. I did not check the garage.
So I want to make sure I understand clearly as well. So if Mr. Phillips is awake, at this point, there is a safety concern, correct?
Right, but I don't know why he would have been awake after 2 a.m.
That wasn't my question.
I'm sorry, but I did say affirmatively correct, yes.
So if he wakes up, we're back to where we were in the driveway in terms of it's scary, you're unsafe, you're fearful for your safety.
I think he may have been happy to have me home. I don't know.
Okay. But you were concerned about that, which is why you did not want to wake him up.
If he was home sleeping, correct. I did not want to wake him up. If he was sleeping, correct. You are right.
But the reason you went home is because you believed he was asleep.
Well, I didn't have anywhere. I didn't have anywhere else to go
Okay.
because I wasn't going to Winona.
Okay. You didn't have anywhere else to go other than Winona that you were aware of.
Well, there weren't any hotels, and I mean I wasn't going to call somebody at 2 a.m. and like Kimmy or somebody and say, "Can I come over?"
And when you had looked up physical abuse, was it quit, quote, or quite?
I'm not sure if it was quit or quote, to tell you the truth.
Okay. So the search engine you used didn't populate resources for anything like that, shelters, nothing? You didn't see any of that?
No, not that I recall. No.
And I'm referring for resources for domestic violence victims.
Yeah, no, I don't recall anything like that.
So when you pull into that driveway, the W driveway,
Yes,
you slow down. I guess you're coming from the WM intersection past the M driveway into the W driveway. Is that right?
correct.
And you didn't pull right up the M driveway. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I don't ever do the M driveway.
Okay. But didn't you testify that that truck, when Mark uses that, he takes that truck and it's always up the M driveway, facing the W driveway, right at the door?
It's always if he's coming from West Salem, yes.
Oh.
He does that driveway. I don't like that driveway.
Okay. So parking his truck in the opposite way that he likes, that he prefers, that wouldn't have upset him?
Objection calls for speculation, relevance.
Overruled if she know if he was upset by that or not.
No, I mean, that's ridiculous. I don't know why he would be upset of how I would park a vehicle.
Oh, well, it is ridiculous, but we've heard that he makes assumptions, right? And he has delusions. Is that also correct?
What does it have to, I don't understand.
Thing.
I don't understand, I'm sorry.
I'll rephrase the question. You had said that you wouldn't do anything to upset Mr. Phillips.
Correct.
And you're referring in many other things, you wouldn't do anything like going to a hotel or something that would make him mad. Or not a hotel, Winona.
Correct.
So things that wouldn't set off a normal person seem to have set off Mr. Phillips,
Not my driving,
not the driving.
not the driving. I mean, he knows which driveway I take.
But not little things like you not acting a certain way or doing a certain thing or behaving the way he wanted you to, that didn't set him off.
Objection, asked and answered, argumentative.
Sustained,
Okay.
both counts. Go ahead. If we can move on, counsel.
So, Ms. Phillips, when you pull into that driveway and the direction you took, and you take that right turn to get into the W driveway,
That is
right?
correct, yes.
Are you going fast? Are you going slow?
I'm going a normal speed going up a driveway.
Okay. So you're not concerned that he is maybe awake?
At that time, no.
But you saw the dining room light, right?
You know, I don't even know if I paid attention to that when I first pulled up. I don't remember. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember driving up and noticing the dining room light on, but I don't, it's, again, 5 years ago, I don't know.
But you did tell me a few minutes ago that those are the big side windows we saw
Yeah.
of that house.
That is correct.
Okay, so you didn't notice that light on when you drove up?
I mean, I might have, I don't, to this day, I don't remember. I don't know.
So, Ms. Phillips, you're going into a situation where a potential abuser is located. Is that fair?
A sleeping abuser is what was in my mind, yes.
And safety is your sole priority. Is that fair?
Objection, asked and answered, argumentative.
Yeah, let's move on, counsel.
Okay.
You can talk about going up the driveway, but go on to other issues other than what you keep on saying over and over again. Go ahead.
Okay. Were you in a state of heightened alert of any variety as you're going up the driveway?
So move on.
Okay. That's a picture of the driveway, request to publish.
Yeah, it's been published before. Go ahead. What exhibit is it?
I believe it's 20. Ms. Phillips, can you point, do you have the laser? Ms. Phillips, can you direct with the laser pointer the direction you would have taken and angle it towards the stopping position of your driveway?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't catch it.
Can you take the laser pointer and direct us the direction you would have taken into where you parked the car?
So I went up and parked the car, like more so over here.
Can we indicate on the record where the laser pointer was?
The laser pointer seems to be going straight up the driveway up to about where the embankment ends the corner of the driveway and then wraps around towards the stopping position that is the driveway between the man cave and the house. Is that accurate, Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
So, Ms. Phillips, once you get inside and I guess the dining room light's on, it's unusual, what happens next?
I went and laid on the couch.
Okay. And at some point,
Well, I apologize. I turned the kitchen, or I locked the door and turned the light off.
no further questions.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor. Lori, were you aware of whether or not Mark had multiple pairs of the same tennis shoes?
Honestly, I didn't. I don't know if I did know that or not because they're identical. They were identical.
Did he have 2 pairs of the same shoes?
He did. Come to find out, yes.
Now, referring back to the text message that Mr. Burdick was asking you about, was the entire text about going to Bismarck without you, was that entire text intended to be facetious, Ms. Phillips?
Absolutely not.
What was your intent with the text with regard to everything but good luck in Bismarck?
I mean, to let him know that I wasn't going, but I don't believe I was being malicious.
Lori, is the reason that you fled from Mark because he was degrading or degrading you or for some other reason?
That I fled from Mark is to get to safety.
Because you were scared?
I was scared of him, yes.
Just to clarify an issue on rule of completeness here. I'm going to page 21, start at line 647. 647.
Sorry, Attorney Zacher, is that my copy or your copy?
That is my copy.
Okay,
It's
I just saw the
exhibit 8 in-
highlight. I want to make sure I didn't
Yeah.
leave my.
Lori, are you there?
Yes.
You remember when Mr. Burdick asked you to read, and then I was like, F this, and then I took off?
Yes.
All right. Going immediately to the next page on page 22, starting at line 648. Investigator Leinfelder clarifies immediately, quote, so he was right at your door, end quote, and your response was, mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Meaning affirmative, yes.
Is that to refer to the fact that when you took off, Mark was right at your door?
Correct.
Is it fair to say that you still cared about Mark, still loved Mark, even after everything that had happened?
Outside of the scope of cause.
Yeah, sustained.
Lori, at this point, is it fair to say that you don't, or you know exactly what happened with Mark on that evening?
I have no idea.
Nothing further.
Any recross?
No.
All right, I think you may step down.
Thank you.
You need to give me the-
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any other witnesses?
Judge, could we give 5 minutes maybe?
All right. Looks like all the parties are here. Mr. Zachary, what, is defense going to call another witness or not?
Your Honor, Ms. Phillips rests.
Right, the defense rests. Is the state has an opportunity for rebuttal, intend to call rebuttal witness?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. What I'd like to do is explain this to the jury. It's always, when this happens, it's always a little awkward. What I'm going to do is going to have the jury come in. I'll just tell them that the defense is rested. State is not calling any further witnesses on rebuttal. I usually explain that. I don't need to explain what rebuttal is, but I say that to them. And then I will tell them that we'll start back up at 1 o'clock. That should give us enough time to do the conference on the jury instructions and get things copied and have some lunch. Does that sound like enough time from Mr. Burdick or Attorney Scamp? Is that enough time to get all that done? Any concerns?
Your Honor, I guess I would defer to the court. If we're going to do the jury instruction, I might respectfully ask for 1:30. But I think that's, but again, defer to the court. I know we're at Friday. We've already had many conversations about not wanting to go into Monday. So that I'll just leave it up at that.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to take hopefully only a few minutes here. And then we can go into the instruction conference, but.
I'm fine with that timing.
Okay. And just so you know, we talked a little bit on a sidebar about limiting closings to 45 minutes. I know there's a lot of information here, but they suggest that over about 45 minutes, you start to lose a jury anyway. Just so you know, that's what I'm looking for. So if we're going to start deliberations late in the afternoon, okay. Can we bring the jury in?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring the jury in. All right, everybody may be seated. So I have good news and pretty much just good news. Just so you know, the defense has rested at this point. The state has an opportunity for something called rebuttal, but what you call rebuttal witnesses, they've decided not to do that. So the case is now completed and submitted to the jury for final jury instructions and deliberations. Just so you know, I'm just going to repeat one part, because we don't choose the alternate until we're completely done with everything right beforehand. There's 2 random alternates who will be chosen. I can't tell you how, and I'll tell you at that point how that's done, but it's completely random, by the way. So during this time, I think lunch is coming up. We will not start, I'm hoping to start right back up at 1 o'clock. There's a number of things we have to do before we can be ready for that last little part. So thank you for your patience on all this, but we will be up at 1 o'clock. And again, I know it's tempting since all the evidence is in. Please do not talk about the case. Wait till all of the closing arguments are done and the final 12 people who will sit in the jury are deliberating. We'll see you in a bit then. An hour and a half. Everybody be seated. So I would like to do the jury instruction conference. And why don't we just start right off the bat? Let's talk about the elements aspect, the issue of 1060, 1060A at this point in time. I know the request from the state, just so you know, I put 1060 in there. That's what I started with. But did the state want to make further argument about 1060A?
Well, Your Honor, I guess I'll briefly, we've talked a lot about it. My understanding when we had the initial conference on Monday was that the court wanted to consider this idea of a special relationship as it relates to 1060A and the evidence presented. The state cited the law element that it is one that the relationship between a husband and wife, the duties owed to each other. In our letter brief, we believe, affirmatively is Wisconsin law that does show that such a duty exists. It is consistent with social policy. It is mirrored in various legal property remedy rights. In terms of things like that, Ms. Phillips had the capacity to act. She had the understanding that she should have acted. Her statements to Investigator Leinfelder, specifically as it relates to if I had known, if he was there, I would have called and done this. I think Mr. Zacher, especially during his direct examination of Ms. Phillips, put a lot of evidence into the record that she cared and would have helped had she known. That's a defense, but it definitely recognizes that this duty exists. It is the kind of thing that is consistent with our social policy. As far as the element of domestic violence is concerned, I believe that was Mr. Zacher's objection. I am not aware of any law that severs the legal duty. Again, going back to, I guess, to borrow from our tort system, duty, breach, causation, damages. Duty isn't the issue when somebody's bad actions. That severs causation, not duty. The idea of the legal duty exists independent of that. We certainly understand when we look at things like, for example, marital privilege as a legal doctrine, that domestic violence does impact that and can temporarily, sever it in certain respects. But Your Honor, this is one where the duty doesn't permanently evaporate irrespective of Mr. Phillips' behavior permanently. So there is a period where Ms. Phillips, the evidence would show, was able to call, was able to do something about it. I think to change the facts, since we're talking about the pure law of this, not the actual applying the law to facts, but it's the pure law of it. If a situation where someone is in the truck and let's say he's on his way to the truck, slips and falls and is in the snow, I can't say that as a matter of law that Ms. Phillips or the person in that situation would have truly had no duty, that they could have went inside and just watched. I don't think that would be the law either. So that's, as far as the issue on just duty, that's our perspective. I guess.
So the duty is just because there's a relationship, a husband and wife relationship. That's the legal duty, because it's a legal duty. This is not a moral duty, as explained in Lefebvre. It's a legal duty. And that's simply because husband and wives are married, that creates a legal duty for them to essentially be a caretaker of the other at all times?
I guess I wouldn't argue at all times, but again, we're not talking about at all times. We're talking about just the creation of an unreasonable and substantial risk. I guess, so there's not at all times, I guess. Should Your Honor clarify the question?
Well, I'm reading the quote from Williquette, which is Williquette. It's a 1986 case, which making referral to a criminal law from Lefebvre. It's just, by the way, it's not precedent, it's persuasive reference to it. This is also a case, as indicated back in 1986. So that means that legal treatise would have been done prior to 1986 of some sort. I understand the state's argument. Mr. Zacher?
Your Honor, I'd rely largely on the letter brief I submitted in advance of trial, but my position is that the legal duty does not exist in this case. as noted in both the annotations to Instruction 1060 as well as Willicat and Newman, the legal duty has to be enumerated and actively exist within the law. And the state hasn't been able to show us where that legal duty for a wife to protect her husband above the general duty of care to that everyone owes one another in the community exists. It doesn't exist in the law, and quite frankly, the duty that the state is suggesting here would run contrary to the clear public policy that the legislature has since adopted on domestic violence, protecting victims of domestic abuse, and particularly Marcy's law, recognizing that individuals have a right to protect themselves and have a right to be free from abuse. So I don't believe that we can fairly classify this as the relationship as husband and wife, that under the circumstances the relationship is more closely akin to abuser and victim, and I don't, certainly there's no special duty of care in that case.
Yeah, I'm going to say there's no enumerated duty within the law between husband and wife necessarily. It's not. I know there's marital property law. There's the privilege. In fact, privilege is talked about very extensively. The concept of privilege versus confidentiality in the recent State versus Johnson case, which is the case which overturns Schifra. But it's also very important to understand we're talking about a legal obligation. Willicat is a case specifically about child abuse, and where there's definitely a caretaker responsibility of, in that case, it was a mother to their child while the child was being abused by the father. That the argument is that the word imperiled, the husband is responsible for their imperiled wife, which is the only line in Willicat, which is the quote from Lefebvre. I don't think that holds, that does not create a duty. What it says is that these are the type of duties we had before. That could be, by the way, under common law. That could be a reference to the idea that, especially under common law, it was not unusual for the caretaker role of the husband for the wife. I do not know the history exactly of that, but I don't think that creates a duty as envisioned in 1060A. Let's say if at the time Mr. Phillips was, disabled and that was Ms. Phillips' responsibility, she'd have a higher duty because she becomes like a guardian at that point almost. That doesn't even get to the issue of the domestic violence. Domestic violence does add another wrinkle to it. I think it gets complex. I think under the Marcy's law, and specifically under the constitutional that constitutional section which has been recently created, it does say individuals are victims upon the time of the crime. It does not mean upon the time of it being reported. So it does create a whole bunch of other issues now for the court. I think either the legislature or higher court needs to make this decision, but I think this is left to the legislature to make a decision whether to enumerate a higher duty under this statute. So the court's going to use 1060. I don't think 1060A is appropriate. Having said that, let's go to the actual jury instructions. Can you email them the verdicts? They're there. We're going to email you the verdict. The verdict's the same that's listed, but the actual verdict, we'll email it to you too.
Can I ask you guys too to hold the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
All right. So what I usually do is I just start at the top and we'll work our way through. Instruction 100, standard instruction, any objection to that?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
As indicated, I'm going to use instruction 1060. Any objection to or any typos of that instruction.
No objection, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Then there's 140, which is a standard burden of, well, 140 is burden of proof, presumption of innocence. Any objection to that?
No, Your Honor.
Your Honor, under reasonable hypothesis, I've become aware that the Instructions Committee recently recommended changing you should do so to you must do so, consistent with law, and I would make that request that under reasonable hypothesis, the jury be directed you must do so and return a verdict of not guilty if they can reconcile upon a reasonable hypothesis consistent with innocence.
That would be consistent with statute, it would be consistent with the earlier finding in presumption of innocence, but state have any objection to that? And was that a change just recently that we don't have?
Judge, so this is, my understanding is just from the Wachtel listserv is that the Instruction Committee formally recommended this change. I don't know that it's been officially implemented, but this is the change that's recommended.
Your Honor, I'm not aware of this. And so if there, who made that recommendation to the Instructions Committee? So if it hasn't been adopted, it hasn't been adopted by the Instructions Committee.
I think you're indicating that it has been adopted by the Instructions Committee?
Judge, I don't have an official version. I'm just relying on literally emails this week from colleagues indicating that the Instructions Committee has agreed to change that language, but I don't have an official version of that for the court.
Let me just say that would reflect the language on page, that reflects language on page 3, which talks about the jury's decision. And it says, if you're not so satisfied, you must find the defendant not guilty. It's consistent and parallel with that concept. I'm surprised over all these years we haven't seen that before. That changed. I'm going to change it to must. I think that's correct. I think that's closer to where the burden is on, that's closer to what the burden is on the state. So I'm going to change it to must.
All right, and if I can just lodge an objection for the record, because it hasn't been changed yet. It's a suggestion we don't even know who made that suggestion. The language is in earlier, and there's a preference that standard instructions are used.
Right. I understand standard instruction would be used, but I've never seen that objection to that before, and I think it's consistent with the language that's in every single element that there is. There's always the jury decision. It has that exact same language every single time. So given that, I think I'm surprised nobody's ever raised that issue before. That seems reasonable to me. So I'm changing that one word from should to must. Moving on to 145, it's standard information, not evidence. Any objection to that?
No objection.
No, Your Honor.
103, evidence defined, that's standard. Any objection?
No objection.
No, Your Honor.
170 is circumstantial evidence. I know the state started off with talking about circumstantial evidence. I assume you'd want to have that instruction in. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
No objection.
All right. So what I do not, what I have in next is 180. Wait, hold on a second. I just skipped over, I'm sorry. Yeah, 180 is the statements by the defendant. I made it the plural statements, even though there was one recorded statement, but there was also the earlier statement made to Sergeant Valencia, or Sergeant, excuse me, investigator. Not sure what his title is. Is Sergeant Investigator. That's what's confusing. It's two words. Sergeant Investigator Valencia. That's why I used the plural. Any objection to that?
No, Judge.
No, and there are other statements that we've used, like text messages and things like that. So I think it's appropriate.
Okay. 157, standard remarks of counsel are not evidence. And 155 are exhibits. Any objection to those two?
No, Your Honor.
No, Judge.
148, objections made by counsel. And then you can follow up with 147, 150. There have been objections which were sustained and asked to be disregarded, and some testimony has been stricken. Any objection to 147, 148, 150?
No, Your
No,
Honor.
Your Honor. Sorry.
Okay, 190. 195, any objection to those two, the standard instructions?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
300, credibility of the witness. This has specifically the paragraph, the defendant has testified, and I included that paragraph, usually excluded if a defendant does not testify. Any objection to how I have 300 written in the instructions?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Um, 200 is expert testimony. As you can see, I left this section in here because I wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen. I can first of all get rid of the paragraph about continue with following. If experts have given conflicting testimony, I'll get rid of that part, of course. There's only been experts. I don't think they were conflicting. And then I would get rid of the, in resolving conflicts of opinion testimony, I would remove that paragraph too. Everybody agree with that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
And then there's expert testimony, hypothetical questions. This is 205. Any objection to that? There was a hypothetical question I believe Mr. Zacher raised at one point.
I did, and no objection.
And maybe in the state followed up with their own hypothetical. I can't remember exactly.
There's no objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just so you know, I will get rid of the titles. They'll still have the numbers, but we'll get rid of the titles of each section. 160, closing arguments. 480, which is the verdict. Any objection to those two?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Um,
My one request that I always make, and I know the court's position on this, is I always ask that not guilty go first, consistent with presumption of innocence.
Yeah, and I always follow the standard verdict form, which is to put guilty first and not guilty second. I'm going to stay with that form. And then 515 is the unanimous verdict. That's standard language. Any objection to 515?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Any obvious typos that I will find when I start reading it out loud?
I did not see any obvious typographical errors, Judge.
None that I could find.
All right. So this is what I'll do.
I
yeah.
do have some requested instructions. I'm sorry, I wasn't
please,
sure.
I forgot to ask. Go ahead.
I am asking that the court consider adding after 170, 172 and 175, which are flight, escape, and concealment. So if they feel that Ms. Phillips was acting in a way to, if she was being untruthful in a way to hide what had happened, that would be part of the concealment. Or if they interpreted her escape as in a different manner than they presented. Obviously it's a jury determination, but those things can be evidence of guilt. and we would like to be able to instruct the jury on that. The other is 175, motive, which instructs the jury that there doesn't have to be a motive. This is not an intentional crime. We're not arguing that she intended anything, but I think that's something that people just as human beings think, like, why did she do this, or why did this happen? And so I just want them to know that they don't have to hear a motive for them to fine for the state. I'd also ask that.
But can I ask you at 175?
Yes, sir.
First part says, intent should not be confused with motive, and there's no intent element here. So that's why
And you're right, I'm sorry, I didn't consider that. And maybe in this case, it would be appropriate to modify intent to state of mind, because recklessness is a state of mind, as is intent. I'm sorry, I did not consider that issue.
So, I'm sorry, you were going to say, and I interrupted you there. You said 172, 175, anything else?
Two others, 255, which is just, we don't need to prove the exact time.
Where does that go? Right after the information?
I'll
look. I'll see what it suggests.
I'm not sure, because it's strange that they have numbers and orders and then they get put in different places. So I don't have a great suggestion, except for maybe that could be with the definition of evidence and circumstantial evidence and those in that grouping.
Yeah. They actually do not have it listed, which means they don't have a suggested point. Yeah, that would make sense after circumstantial evidence. Okay.
And then lastly, the instruction 275 on other crimes or wrongs, that was not included, and the defense was able to present other crimes. They do have a burden to bear that the jury should be instructed about.
So the reason I hesitate on 275 is because it's talking about the conduct of the defendant. This is not the defendant in this situation.
That's
It's
true.
the decedent.
And it should be modified to decedent.
And it talks about the offense charged in its subsections. It doesn't talk about, so this is very much intended for other acts of defendants, not necessarily a witness.
That's correct, but it is true that the proponent of other acts does bear a burden of production and a burden of proof. That is probably the most common usage for other crimes or wrongs. But again, the jury should be instructed that there is a level of proof that they need to consider.
So this is what the state is asking for is a very much different from 275. I gave this yesterday. This case has been pending for a long time. Other acts is out there. This seems like to be a need for a special instruction because it would be radically different from what 275 says. So I'm not going to include 275. I'll just tell you that right now. Going on to Mr. Zacher, 172. Any objection to 172 being?
Your Honor, I would object because I don't think that the issue has been raised in the state's case in chief up until now, and I don't believe that there's a factual basis to support an inference that Ms. Phillips's flight was for the purpose of concealing a wrong act.
Yeah, I agree. The court's not going to allow 172. 177,
That was motive.
It was 175.
175, I'm sorry.
I guess I'm also concerned with that one because, as the court indicated, this is not an intentional act, and motive is typically, to distinguish between a person's rationale for doing something, but also say that they don't have to have a rationale for it. I mean, here the state of mind is recklessness.
Yeah, I agree. The court's not going to include 175. 255.
And that's, refresh my memory, Judge.
That's the specific date
Time.
and time, yeah.
That one I think is appropriate.
Yeah, we'll include 255. 255, I'll include it right after, $170. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that makes sense there.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So just so it's clear, it'll be 170, 255, and then 180. Sound right?
Sure.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Right. So, with that, I think that's everything. Did you have any jury instructions you wanted to add, Mr. Zacher?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Well, you don't have much opportunity to add them later.
No, I've discussed it with Ms. Phillips, and I'm not going to ask for a special instruction at this time.
Okay. Anything further from the state at this point?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
What I'm going to do is, let's be back here, say a couple minutes before 1, so we can start right up at 1.